What shakes an enemy more than defeat? It's not your silence, not even your survival. It's the shock of realizing their carefully engineered attack only made you stronger. Imagine it. Chosen one, in secret corners, behind locked doors. They whispered strategies like poisonous smoke, believing they had you cornered. Yet before their plan ever touched you, heaven had already reversed it. Their ambush boomeranged. Their fire turned on themselves. And now they're choking on the smoke of their own schemes. This is why you are dangerous to them, because you didn't just endure, you outsmarted them. Their unity became chaos. Their numbers became noise. And their so-called strategy collapsed under the weight of truth. History has proven this pattern: the Inquisition, the witch trials, smear campaigns. Every mob that believed malice would prevail ended up being consumed by its own fire. That's what's happening to your enemies right now. Chosen one, if this word is burning in your spirit, comment 777 below to align with this moment. Your voice matters. And to those who have supported this mission through likes, shares, and especially super thanks. Your presence is not just support, it's fuel. Together, we're spreading a light that exposes lies and lifts up truth. Thank you for being part of this unstoppable wave. And now lean in, because what your enemies just experienced is not simply loss. It is humiliation. They thought they had written your ending, but instead they authored their own downfall. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will uncover why their shock is only the beginning of their collapse. God's chosen ones. Your enemies are in shock you outsmarted their spiritual attack. Number 1, when they struck your body, they did not realize they were colliding with a fortress of spirit, reinforced by foundations deeper than any stone cathedral. The cruelest punishment for an enemy is to watch their sharpest weapon bend like wax in the fire of your resilience. And that is precisely what unfolded. Chosen one. They gathered in secret, plotting like Herod, scheming against the newborn Christ. Believing their map of your weaknesses was complete, they thought if they stripped your resources, poisoned your name, and starved your reputation, you would collapse like a house built on sand. But as Jesus said in Matthew 7:25, the rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew, and beat on that house. But it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock, and your life, anchored in divine bedrock, refused to crumble. What enemy can bear the torment of seeing every plan scatter like dust in the wind? They slandered you, certain that venomous words would erase your worth. Forgetting Isaiah 54:17, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. They cut off connections, hoping your network was your breath, not knowing your true lifeline runs straight into eternity. They tried to isolate you, convinced loneliness would crush your soul. Yet, Psalm 68:6 proclaims, God sets the lonely in families, and here you stand, proof that divine adoption outweighs human abandonment. Now imagine this image. A band of hunters enter a forest with nets and arrows, thinking they've cornered a trembling deer. Yet when the trap is sprung, a lion roars back. Their knees buckle. Their arrows fall useless. Isn't this what your enemies feel now, realizing they miscalculated the terrain of your soul? Their weapons aimed at flesh collided with spirit, and spirit cannot be caged. History echoes this pattern. The Persians at Marathon thought numbers guaranteed victory. Yet the Greeks revealed that spirit outweighs statistics. Gandhi, an unarmed lawyer, stood against an empire, and with nothing but truth, sharpened into discipline, he broke chains heavier than steel. As he once said, "Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will." Isn't that the same pulse that kept you standing when they thought you would crawl? And what of nature? Think of the acacia tree in the desert, stripped by heat, battered by sand, yet its roots dig deeper when threatened. Attack only makes it stronger, like the night-blooming cereus flower, unseen for months. But at the appointed hour, it explodes with fragrance, leaving all in awe. Your enemies. 2. Thought delay meant denial. But your resilience was simply preparing to bloom at the perfect midnight. Art testifies. In Handel's Messiah, the choir thundered, "And he shall reign forever and ever." Do you not see how every attempt to mute you only made heaven's symphony louder in your life? Or in Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan's boast, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven," shows the tragic end of arrogance, reminding us that enemies blinded by pride always sabotage themselves. How different from you, who stood not in pride, but in alignment with truth. But pause for a question. Why do your enemies feel more restless now than when they launched their attack? Could it be because, like Pharaoh watching Israel walk through parted seas, they are forced to witness a miracle that mocks their strategies? Their gossip sharpened your discipline, their betrayal honed your awareness, their rejection trained you in self-reliance. Their very nets became your stepping stones. Does this not mirror Joseph? Sold as a slave, yet raised to command Egypt. Fulfilling Genesis 50:20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done." Let us not forget the villains whose pride carved their downfall. Nero, draped in power, sought to extinguish Christians with fire, yet only fueled a blaze of faith that conquered Rome itself. Or Cain, burning with envy, lifting his hand against Abel, only to be branded with a curse heavier than the stone he raised. These stories are not relics, they are warnings that the schemes of the wicked inevitably consume their architects. The wisdom of ordinary voices affirms this truth. Maria, a seamstress in Naples who lost everything in World War II, once told her grandchildren, "When bombs fell, he stitched hope into torn cloth." They could not steal that thread. Her words echo across generations. Resilience is a frequency that reverberates beyond ruin, like resonance in physics. When one tuning fork strikes, another across the room begins to hum in harmony. Your endurance resonates, igniting unseen courage in countless others. And so, chosen one, enemies sit restless now, replaying their failures like a broken record. They tried to cage you with shallow weapons, but you stood armed with depth. They brought lies, you brought truth. They carried panic, you walked in calmness. They fought with noise, you carried divine resonance. Their power was external, fragile, temporary. Yours was internal, invisible, eternal. 2 Corinthians 4:16 declares, "Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day." In what ways are you choosing to nurture the invisible, eternal strength within? Even when the world fights to shake it, here lies the final insult to their injury. Every spear they hurled became a tool in your promotion. Every rejection became your stage. Every false accusation became the proof of your alignment. Just as David declared in Psalm 23:5, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil." Their traps were transformed into your banquet. So rise up now. Stand taller than before. The battlefield has shifted, and you carry the unshakable truth. Spirit does not crumble. Spirit outsmarts. Spirit endure. Spirit wins. Your enemies are in shock because they never realized they were not fighting a fragile body but an eternal flame. Chosen one, this is your hour. Stand and let the world see what heaven already knows. Number 2, the tragedy for your enemies is this: they were swinging furiously at a shadow, but the real you had already risen beyond their reach. Nothing devastates an enemy more than discovering that all their power, all their schemes, all their rage was wasted on a ghost. That's the report circling in their camp right now. Confusion, humiliation, panic. They plotted with arrogance, thinking they knew every fault line in your soul. Yet when they struck, the echo rang hollow. For the one they prepared to fight had already been buried. 2 Corinthians 5:17 declares, "If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone. The new is here." They made war on ashes, but you had already risen as flame. And now their greatest humiliation is realizing their strategies weren't simply late, they were irrelevant. Every plan that once terrified you is now powerless, because you are not the same person who once trembled. Picture this vivid truth. A thief approaches a house with an old key, smiling in arrogance, certain he still knows the lock. He rattles the door, pushes harder, even kicks it in rage. But inside, the locks have been changed, the alarms upgraded, and the owner now stands unshaken. Isn't that your enemies today? Furious, lost, humiliated, because their outdated tricks cannot touch the fortified soul you have become. Their key no longer fits the door, because the architecture of your spirit has been rebuilt. And when they try to storm what they think is weakness, they meet walls they cannot penetrate and defenses they never imagined. Their rage grows louder, but their power grows smaller, and they choke on the futility of weapons that no longer work. Why did they fail to see your transformation? Could it be that pride blinds them as it once blinded Pharaoh, who hardened his heart again and again until his army drowned in the Red Sea? Exodus 14:28 records that not one of them survived. Enemies cling to the story they once wrote about you because their ego depends on it. They insist you are still weak, still gullible, still breakable. But the battlefield has changed. You've stepped into a new dimension where their weapons swing uselessly through empty air. Isn't that why they rage louder than ever now? Because silence from you exposes the noise in them. And like Pharaoh, their obsession blinds them from seeing the simple truth. They are fighting yesterday's version of you while you live in today's freedom. Nature itself testifies. A caterpillar is easy prey for birds, soft and defenseless. Yet when transformation wraps it in silence, wings emerge, and the hunter cannot recognize its prey. Isn't that your story? They trained to attack crawling flesh, but you now soar as something they cannot grasp. Or think of volcanic soil. The very eruption that seems to destroy the land becomes the ground for the most fertile growth. Every wound you suffered became armor. Every betrayal became fuel. Every fall became a step upward. Enemies always forget that the universe wastes nothing. Even the forest, after fire, grows back stronger, greener, richer than before. So how could they imagine your fire would end you when creation itself proves otherwise? History provides its villains as warnings. King Saul, driven by jealousy, hurled spears at David, but the very anointing he tried to extinguish only burned brighter. In his obsession, Saul lost throne, legacy, and peace. Or consider Emperor Diocletian, who launched brutal persecutions of Christians, erecting monuments to declare he had extinguished the faith. Today, those monuments are rubble, while the gospel he tried to silence resounds across the earth. Do you see how every tyrant who wages war against the chosen always ends up building their own downfall? And isn't it poetic justice that the harder they struck, the faster history erased them, while the chosen ones they tried to erase remain immortal in memory? Their legacy is dust, but your destiny is stone. But pause here, chosen one, and ask, why are they more restless now than when they began their attacks? Because wasted effort haunts the human soul. Nothing gnaws at an enemy more than the realization that every whisper, every plot, every gathering was aimed at someone who no longer exists. Isaiah 43, 18-19 says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. That new thing is you." Walking untouchable through a battlefield filled with enemies swinging at smoke, their hearts pound, not from victory, but from dread. Because deep down they know the war they think they are winning has already ended in their loss. And the haunting silence after every failed attack is their reminder that you have already transcended them. The truth is brutal. They spent hours memorizing your weaknesses, only to discover you had already outgrown them. It is like a boxer who trains obsessively against old footage, entering the ring with strategies ready. But when the bell rings, the opponent is faster, sharper, transformed. Every move he practiced is useless. Isn't this the collapse your enemies now face, staring in horror as the target of their hate has evolved beyond recognition? Their greatest nightmare is not just that they missed their chance, but that no new chance will ever come. Every jab they throw reveals how outdated they are, and every calm step you take proves they cannot touch you. They dug pits, congratulating themselves on their foresight. But when you passed by, you leapt higher, leaving them staring into the emptiness they created. Psalm 7:15 warns, "Whoever digs a hole and scoops it out falls into the pit they have made." And now, in frustration, they stumble into the very traps they prepared for you. Their schemes, once whispered with pride, have become chains around their own feet. And as they fall into the pits of their arrogance, you continue to rise, proving that destiny always rewards the one who builds while others destroy. Isn't it humiliating for them to realize their hands built nothing but their own downfall? And here is the final sting. They thought they controlled the script, but you rewrote it. They thought you were trapped in yesterday's grave, but you rose into tomorrow's light. Their weapons are stale. Their victories are illusions. Their war is lost before it begins. Romans 8:37 proclame, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." You are not simply surviving, you are more than conquering. And that is the wound they cannot heal. Because it is not your survival that haunts them, but your superiority. Their rage belongs to yesterday, but your crown belongs to forever. So stand, chosen one, rise higher than before. You are untouchable, not because the fight disappeared, but because you evolved beyond their reach. Let your enemies waste their energy in yesterday's war. You carry tomorrow's crown. Their hands are empty, their hearts are restless, and their whispers are hollow, because you outgrew the battlefield while they were still plotting in the shadows. And with every breath you take forward, you prove again that what they fought is gone, and what you have become is unstoppable. Number 3. The greater the chains they forged for you, the more explosive your breakthrough became. Enemies thought they were tightening your prison, yet in truth, they were hammering the gates of your freedom. What is the cruelest joke life plays on the wicked? That the harder they push the chosen down, the higher the rebound shakes the earth beneath their feet. Salm 118, 22 declares, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." What they dismissed, heaven has exalted, and that is the torment they choke on tonight. Their whispers became shouts of despair, because what they rejected now stands above them, and every chain they mocked has become the very testimony of why you could not be stopped. They wrapped chains around you, thinking they were silencing a prisoner, but each link they tightened awakened another hidden weapon inside you. Did they not realize that Joseph's dungeon was his preparation hall, where the forgotten prisoner became Pharaoh's second in command? Genesis 41-41. Their prison was your forge. Their mockery was your anvil. Their rejection was your refining fire. Every clang of their hammer only sharpened your edge. Every insult was another spark, igniting the furnace of your transformation. Isn't it tragic for them now, knowing that their effort to confine you became the very environment that equipped you to lead? Their cages created a king, their stones crowned a giant, and their fire revealed your immortal steel. Now imagine this. Chosen one. A circle of enemies dig a deep pit, smirking as they wait for you to fall. They gather with cruel laughter, sure that your story ends in that hole. Yet, when the moment arrives, you do not fall, you climb. You scale the walls with muscles you didn't even know you carried. And when you stand at the rim staring down, who is laughing now? Isn't it their turn to tremble? Realizing they were never your captors but your trainers. Their pit was not your grave but your gymnasium. And the cruel irony is this: while they sat satisfied waiting for your death, you rose from their trap with strength that turned their laughter into silence. Their eyes cannot comprehend how what they meant for burial became your birthplace. Science itself proves the pattern. Pressure creates change, and resonance occurs when one vibration awakens another at the same frequency. Isn't that what happened when their curses struck you? They thought they were silencing your voice, but instead they tuned you to heaven's frequency, causing your life to vibrate with power they cannot withstand. Romans 5:3-4 says, "We glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope." Every rumor, every betrayal, every attempt to box you in was not a chain, it was a weight. And weights do not bind giants, they build them. The same way gravity strengthens wings when resisted, their pressure only taught you to soar higher. And as resonance spreads, your strength echoes into every corner of their fear, shaking their confidence until they collapse. Why do your enemies look so bewildered now? Could it be because they expected you to crumble like the old you, crying, begging, folding under pressure? Instead, you rose like Daniel in the lion's den, where what was meant for death became the theater of God's power. Daniel 6:22. You did not just endure the fire, you became fire. You did not just survive the storm, you turned into lightning itself. What was meant to suffocate, you became oxygen. And that oxygen birthed a roar. Their astonishment is the clearest evidence. The version of you they attacked no longer exists. Every new day terrifies them. Because you evolve faster than their hatred can adapt. Ordinary lives bear witness. Lucia, a seamstress in Lisbon during the 1972nd, once lost everything when her workshop burned. She told her children, "The fire destroyed my fabric, but it taught me how to weave again with stronger thread." Isn't that your story too? That the flames they sent did not consume you, but revealed what could not be burned. Her testimony echoes yours. Destruction was never final. It was instructional. Their cruelty taught you new skills. Their sabotage revealed your deeper wells. Their betrayal carved pathways you never knew existed. And now, like Lucia, you stand weaving a future that is unterrible, stronger than anything they could have imagined. And here lies the truth that keeps them awake at night. Without their attacks, you might never have discovered the arsenal inside you. Without their pressure, the diamond in you would have stayed hidden. Without their betrayal, the gift of discernment would have slept. They thought they shackled you, but chains became chisels. They thought they weakened you, but hate became your harvest. They thought they were burying you. But as John 12:24 proclaims, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. You did not die, you multiplied. And the torment that scorches them now is knowing that their every attempt became fertilizer for your legacy. Their rage did not stop you, it replicated you. Their hatred did not silence you, it amplified you. So stand now, chosen one. Do not bow to yesterday's chains. Rise as the unbreakable tower, the cathedral forged by storms, the living fire they can no longer extinguish. You were never meant to be contained, and today the whole world sees it. The chains that once mocked you now decorate your story as trophies. The enemies that once laughed now watch in horror. Rise higher. Roi Loudé. Shine brighter, for your breakthrough is not just survival. It is domination. Number 4. Your survival became their public execution. The sharpest blade against an enemy is not your revenge, but your persistence, your refusal to vanish, your undeniable existence. Isn't it torment enough for them that you're still breathing, still rising, still carrying a light they swore they could extinguish? Psalm 27:2 says, "When the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall." That scripture is the dagger twisting in their pride. Because you did not fall, you stood. And not only did you stand, you grew taller, stronger, radiant with the strength of one who has walked through fire and found that fire could not consume. Their curses echoed in the dark, but your heartbeat became the anthem of survival. They schemed in secret, whispering in corridors, stacking every card on the table with one burning ambition: erase you, erase your name, erase your voice, erase your presence from the earth. They imagined you breaking, collapsing under weight, pleading for mercy. But when the smoke cleared, what did they find? You alive, unshaken, thriving. Does this not echo the fiery furnace where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked unharmed while the flames devoured their enemies? Daniel 3:27. Survival became your testimony, and their celebration turned into shame. And the shame cuts deeper each time your name rises, where they swore it would never be heard again. Their plans became ashes, while your presence became a pillar visible to all. Their whispers sound like static, but your survival roars like thunder. Imagine this. Chosen one. A firing squad lines up, certain that when the smoke lifts, there will be no trace of you. They pull the triggers, and for a moment they taste victory. Yet as the haze drifts away, you are still there, untouched, unbowed, staring back as their hands tremble in disbelief. Isn't that the humiliation they endure daily? Realizing that the target of their hate refuses to vanish, they expected silence, but they got your song. They expected absence, but they met your unbreakable presence. And every time they replay that scene in their minds, their pride splits wider, because they know their strongest weapon has failed against your quiet endurance. Their nightmares repeat your gaze, unshaken, as proof of their futility. Here's the brutal fact. Survival is louder than destruction. Every rumor they spread was smoke without flame. Every curse they spat was theater without substance. They believed their blades were sharp, but each strike shattered against the stone of your faith. Isaiah 40:31 reminds us, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles." Do you see now why your very breath has become thunder in their nightmares? Your survival announces that their empire was built on sand. Their shadows tried to swallow you, but shadows cannot kill what walks in light. And every day you keep moving. The ground under them cracks with the sound of their own illusions breaking. And why does your mere presence sting them more deeply than 1,000 rebuttals? Because every step you take is a verdict. Every achievement is another nail in the coffin of their illusions. They thought intimidation was power, but power built on lies crumbles like sand. They mistook silence for erasure, but silence became the courtroom where God announced their defeat. Romans 8:30 asks, "If God is for us, who can be against us? What weapon can stand against the decree of heaven?" Each new breath you take proves heaven's verdict again. As if God himself writes across the sky, their power has expired. And in that silence where they hoped you'd vanish, your existence became the echo that refuses to fade. The voices of history echo this truth. The Italian artist Caravaggio, despite persecution and exile, painted masterpieces that outlived every enemy who mocked him. His brush declared survival louder than revenge. And in Beethoven's Symphony No. Woo, the opening motif, 3 short notes followed by a long, was described as fate knocking at the door. Yet Beethoven, though deaf, turned fate into music that conquered centuries. Isn't this your anthem too, that the fate designed to silence you only made your melody eternal? Caravaggio's shadows became eternal brilliance. Beethoven's silence became eternal sound. Your scars likewise have become eternal proof. A canvas where heaven paints resilience. And what of ordinary resilience? Rosa, a baker in Seville, once lost her entire livelihood in a flood, yet told her neighbors, "Water can drown flour, but it cannot drown hunger." She rebuilt, stronger, and her bakery became a refuge for the whole community. Isn't that your story as well, that the rubble which was supposed to bury you became the stage of your rebirth? Her ovens roared again, and so too has your fire, burning stronger than ever. Their floods could not drown her hunger, and their flames could not drown your destiny. Ordinary lives become extraordinary testimonies when survival itself becomes resistance. Enemies choke on this reality. You were not fragile. You were forged. You did not merely survive. You rose untouchable. Their strategies were illusions, their threats empty, their power counterfeit. They planned your disappearance. But your existence became the verdict of their failure. 2 Corinthians 4-9 proclaims, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Every day you live, breathe, and rise higher. You carve their defeat deeper into the stone of history. Their monuments crumble. While your life becomes a living monument, their stories vanish into dust. But your story is etched into eternity's walls. And the more you thrive, the more unbearable their silence becomes. So rise now. Chosen one, do not waste energy on revenge. Your life itself is the loudest execution of their schemes. Your survival is their public downfall. Your endurance, their humiliation. Your thriving, their eternal nightmare. Stand taller, breathe deeper, and let your very presence declare the truth. They are lost, and you cannot be erased. And every sunrise you see is another trumpet blast announcing that their time has ended and your destiny has only begun. Number 5. While they crawled in the dirt. You rose untouchable into heights their hands can never reach. The sharpest humiliation an enemy can ever taste is not your retaliation, but your refusal to descend, leaving them swinging at shadows while you ascend into clarity. Isn't it a dagger in their pride to realize that the fight they were desperate for never even happened? Isaiah 54:17 reminds us, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." And this truth is the chain around their neck, because every strike they launched dissolved into smoke. Their rage turned into their ruin. Because while they shouted from the mud, you were already breathing the rarefied air of destiny. Their voices cracked with desperation, while your silence thundered like judgment. And now the battlefield lies empty. Not because you lost, but because you refused to even enter it on their terms. They expected you to meet them in the mud, gossip for gossip, insult for insult, venom for venom, but you denied them the chaos they craved. What happens when a battle is planned but the opponent never shows? Confusion, collapse, self-destruction. Your silence became their loudest defeat. Doesn't this echo the moment when Jesus stood silent before Pilate? Matthew 27:14. His refusal to answer was the testimony that rattled Rome's halls of power. In your silence was strength, and in their noise was weakness. Their craving for drama turned into the evidence of their emptiness. And isn't it cruel irony that your refusal to stoop became the very weapon that shattered their pride? Now imagine this scene. A group of rivals gathers at the foot of a mountain, shouting threats, hurling stones, demanding you come down and fight on their terms. Yet instead of descending, you kept climbing higher, each step widening the gap between their noise and your peace. Their stones fell short. Their voices turned into faint echoes, and their frustration grew into madness. Isn't this the battlefield shift driving them insane, that you chose higher ground while their strategies became useless? They never prepared for an opponent who would not stoop. They never dreamed the real battle was not in the mud, but in the climb. And the more you ascended, the smaller they became, until their threats sounded like whispers in the wind. Nature itself whispers the truth. The lotus rises from the mud, yet carries no stain, and the hawk soars beyond the reach of crows who scream from below. When your enemies tried to drag you downward, they became chained to the mud themselves. while you rose untouchable. Psalm 40, Dos declares. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. The oak tree does not lower itself to argue with weeds. It simply stretches higher toward the sun. And like the eagle riding thermals far above storms, your elevation became untouchable because heaven itself was your wind. Their claws are dull because their reach is too short. And your strength is terrifying because your rise has no ceiling. But why does your calmness scorch them more than any counterattack? Because lies survive only when you react. Manipulation thrives only when you give attention. Gossip spreads only when you wrestle with it. You gave them nothing. And by giving them nothing, you gave yourself everything. Isn't that why David wrote in Psalm 23:5? You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Your progress became a banquet they had to watch without a seat at the table. And each time you advance without acknowledging them, they shrivel in the shadows of their irrelevance. Their fire dies when you refuse to feed it. And their weapons rust when you refuse to pick them up. Their need for your attention is their undoing. Because your refusal is the loudest verdict. History warns through its villains. Nebuchadnezzar, the arrogant king of Babylon, forced nations into bowing at his golden statue. But when God humbled him, he was driven into the wilderness, eating grass like cattle. Daniel 4:33. His obsession became his humiliation. Or Haman in the book of Esther, who built gallows for Mordecai, only to be hanged on them himself. Esther 7:10. Isn't that the fate awaiting all who dig pits for the chosen? Their obsession is the blueprint of their downfall. And think of Herod, who schemed to silence the infant Christ. Yet his own throne crumbled into dust, while the child he hunted became the King of Kings. Every tyrant who demanded a fight on their terms ended up devoured by the very trap they built. So why are your enemies restless now? Because while they spent sleepless nights scheming, whispering, shadow boxing against an illusion, you were climbing, building, and thriving. Their obsession became their exhaustion. Their bitterness became their downfall. Their weapons turned to dust because you never stooped to hold them. Romans 8:37 declares. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. And the torment deepens daily, because every sunrise you see is proof that their war was wasted. Their energy has become smoke, but your growth has become eternal stone. Isn't that why their laughter sounds like groans now? Because your crown shines brighter with every step they never imagined you would take. Chosen one. Understand this. You didn't just avoid their traps. You rendered them invisible. You didn't descend into their dirt. You ascended into light, and now they are left choking on their own schemes. Staring upward at the one reality, they can never touch you. Stand tall. Rise higher. And let your very existence announce the truth. You are unreachable, untouchable, and unstoppable. And the higher you climb, the clearer the verdict. Their war has ended, but your reign has only begun. Number 6. Their alliance of snakes became the noose around their own necks. Enemies believed that by uniting in hate, they were constructing an army. But the harsh reality is that hatred does not build, it detonates. What they forged was not strength, but a ticking time bomb. And now it is exploding from the inside. Mark 3:25 says, "If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand." Isn't that exactly the truth eating them alive? They imagined numbers were power. Yet their very multiplication became their undoing. Every whisper of malice was a crack in their foundation. Every smirk of envy, another fracture in their walls. What they paraded as an empire was already a ruin in waiting. They gathered shoulder to shoulder, whispering in corners, feeding on each other's bitterness, deceived into thinking that their shared venom made them invincible. But tell me what happens when wolves circle the prey only to realize their hunger turns them against each other. They tear each other apart. Isn't that the battlefield of your enemies today? They never were allies. They were rivals wearing masks. And the moment pressure pressed in, their fake loyalty collapsed into suspicion, paranoia, and betrayal. Their unity lasted only as long as their laughter, and once fear entered the room, knives pointed inward. What they thought was a shield became a cage of suspicion. And now they devour themselves faster than they ever tried to devour you. Here is a truth they never understood. Unity without purpose is not unity. It is poison. Their circle was never a fortress. It was a fragile chain, already rusting before it ever touched you. Eclesiastes 4:12 declares, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken, but their cord was made of envy. And envy does not bind, it corrodes. Isn't that why their gatherings always ended in whispers of doubt and glances of mistrust? They did not sharpen each other, they corroded one another. The more they conspired, the more obvious their fractures became, until their meetings sounded less like strategy and more like the soundtrack of collapse. And as their venom spread, it poisoned themselves far more than it ever reached you. History records the same downfall. The Tower of Babel rose high with the illusion of unity. But because the foundation was rebellion, God scattered them with confusion. Genesis 11:7-8. Is this not the mirror image of your enemies? They thought their plotting was strength, but confusion became their inheritance. Like an unstable molecule vibrating at conflicting frequencies, they collapsed because their resonance was destructive, not harmonious. Every alliance built on lies carries the DNA of its own destruction, and like Babel's rubble, their plans now lie in ruins, testifying that no scheme built on pride can stand before heaven's decree. Their alliance sounded like thunder, but it was only the noise of a storm collapsing into silence. Why did they even come together in the first place? Could it be because your light revealed what they lacked? And in desperation they clung to each other, mistaking shared hatred for strength. But hatred does not unify, it isolates. They weren't collaborating. They were competing. Each one secretly desired to be the loudest, the sharpest, the most feared. And what happens when ambition outweighs loyalty? The entire structure fractures. Isn't this why kingdoms built in spite crumble faster than those attacked by fire? Psalm 37:12-13 says, the wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, but the Lord laughs at the wicked. For he knows their day is coming. Their alliance was never stable. It was a performance already unraveling. And the unraveling is no longer slow, it is violent, chaotic, and irreversible. In ordinary life, this truth shines through. I once heard of a dock worker in Marseille named Henri, who said after his corrupt supervisors turned on each other, a rope woven from rotten fibers will snap in your hands. His words echo across this moment. Your enemy's rope snapped before it ever touched you. And doesn't it make sense? Rottenness cannot produce strength, only weakness. Their own greed rotted their rope. Their mistrust frayed every strand, until all they held was dust. Henri's wisdom lives on as proof that no alliance of corruption can ever survive the weight of truth. And what of architecture? Their alliance was like a bridge built on shifting sand, impressive in form, but doomed by physics. Stress fractures formed beneath the surface long before the structure collapsed. Isn't this why they wasted their strength policing one another, questioning loyalties, doubting intentions, while you stood steady and untouchable? Their obsession with destroying you blinded them to the reality that they were already destroying themselves. Every rumor was another crack in their concrete. Every betrayal, another tremor in their pillars, until the whole bridge groaned under its own instability. They strutted across it with pride, never realizing it would collapse beneath their own feet. Pharaoh learned this truth in Exodus. He pursued Israel with his armies, united in rage. But the waters of the Red Sea swallowed them whole. Exodus 14:28. That is the humiliation your enemies now endure. The very unity they trusted became their noose. What they paraded as strength was in fact the guarantee of their defeat. They thought their tide of rage would drown you, but heaven turned it into their own flood. And now their downfall is no longer a prediction. It is a living testimony of how arrogance always ends. Chosen one, hear this final decree. Their alliance was only a facade, a fragile mask collapsing under its own weight. Their envy, mistrust, and instability became the architecture of their downfall. Isaiah, Isson promises, all who rage against you will surely be ashamed and disgraced. Those who oppose you will be as nothing and perish. So rise now, stand taller than ever, and let your survival declare their funeral. For the noose they tied was never for you, it was for themselves. And every time you breathe, their rope tightens, proving that no alliance of snakes can strangle the one anointed by heaven. Number 7. They tried to drown you in fear, but you drank it, spat it out as clarity, and rose higher than they ever imagined. Fear is the oldest weapon of cowards, the invisible leash of tyrants. It looks mighty in the shadows, but the moment light shines on it, it collapses into smoke. Isn't that the dagger twisting inside your enemies now? They believed intimidation would freeze your steps, cloud your vision, and silence your voice. Jet 2 Timothy 1:7 declares, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Their so-called masterstroke became the very torch that exposed their weakness. And every breath you take now mocks their wasted investment in fear. They wrapped fear around you like chains, whispering rumors, hurling threats, weaving lies, certain you would tremble. But fear only controls the blind. Isn't that why Daniel, when thrown into the lion's den, remained calm while his enemies quaked outside? Daniel 6:23. Your enemies hoped panic would paralyze you. Yet instead you studied the shadows until you saw the puppet strings. And once you saw the strings, their entire act collapsed into humiliation. Now they sit trembling, knowing the show is over and the stage belongs to you. Picture it. A magician terrifies a crowd with monstrous shapes on the wall, forms that look immense in the dark. The audience gasps, trembling, until someone flips the light and reveals only a puppet dangling on frail strings. Isn't that the nightmare your enemies now live? Every whisper they spun, every illusion they cast, fell apart the moment you refused to blink. And from that moment on, the crowd stopped fearing the shadows and started seeing your light. Here is the truth they never accounted for. Fear doesn't destroy the wise. It sharpens them. Soldiers train under live fire not to be consumed, but to learn the rhythm, the sound, the timing of chaos. That is what you did. Their threats became your drills. Their lies became case studies. Their storms became simulations. Every scare tactic became your training ground. Psalm 34:4 says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Isn't that the very proof of your freedom? Their fire became your classroom, and you graduated unstoppable. And why did fear fail when it seemed to work on everyone else? Because once seen clearly, fear is powerless. They thought you'd bow, but you elevated. They thought you'd hesitate, but you anticipated. They thought you'd stumble, but you mapped their every move. Isn't that exactly why Goliath fell before David? 1 Samuel 17:50. Because David saw beyond the giant's threats and trusted in a greater power. Their weapon of fear backfired, turning into your compass. And now, every step you take forward is another giant falling in front of you. Art testifies to this truth. In Verdi's Requiem, the choir cries, Dies Irae, Day of Wrath, a terrifying storm of sound. But then it gives way to Lux Eterna, eternal light, reminding the world that fear is only the prelude to clarity. Your life echoes the same score. Fear roared, but clarity triumphed. And Shakespeare once wrote in Julius Caesar, cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. Isn't that the essence of your victory, that fear kills them daily while you walk unbroken? The song of your survival now drowns out the chorus of their cowardice. Ordinary people bear this witness. In a small village in Peru, a farmer named Isabel once said, after an earthquake destroyed her home, the ground shook, but it taught me where to build stronger. That is your reality. Fear shook you, but it also showed you foundations that cannot be moved. Your enemies didn't know the quake would only anchor you deeper into destiny. Isaiah 41:10 Ashures. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Fear was their chosen weapon, but it became your revelation. And now, while they remain tangled in paranoia, running through the same dark maze, you walk freely with eyes wide open. Their maze became your map, and now they are forever trapped in what you've already conquered. Chosen one, rise. Fear was supposed to drown you, yet you drank it, spat out clarity, and stand now above them, untouchable, unshaken, devastatingly aware. Your very existence has become the burning evidence that their greatest weapon has collapsed. Stand tall, for fear has bowed before you, and the world must now witness your rise. Number 8. They tried to script your downfall, but you seized the pen and rewrote the ending. The cruelest defeat for an enemy is realizing the story they labored to write about you will never be published, because you were always the true author. Isn't that humiliation enough for them? They gathered with ink dipped in envy, scratching false lines across the paper of your life, hoping to reduce your destiny to a fragile chapter of failure. Yet, Jeremiah 29:11 declares, For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Their counterfeit script dissolved the moment heaven's pen inscribed your real story in indelible ink. And here is the irony: they thought your silence was their triumph. But silence was simply the pause before heaven thundered. They plotted your ending with malicious paragraphs, lies like sentences, rumors like chapters, defamations like ink stains. But every smear was unmasked as fiction the moment you rose and kept writing. Isn't this the same truth that silenced the accusers of Joseph, who threw him into a pit, sold him into slavery, and still had to bow before him in Egypt? Genesis 50-20. Their drafts of your obituary were torn apart by the living reality of your victories. For every false headline they created, your actions wrote volumes that no human hand could erase. They thought the ink of slander was permanent, but the living ink of resilience bled brighter. Imagine this scene. A circle of envious critics sit around a table, editing your life as if you were trapped in their cheap novel. They cross out your triumphs, insert failures, twist your image into something grotesque, laughing as though they had final say. But isn't it ironic that while they were busy scribbling lies, you were publishing your masterpiece in real time? Their version reached no further than their own circles of bitterness, while your truth went global. Isaiah 55:11 proclaims, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire." And here's the fatal blow. Their counterfeit books were never stocked in the library of eternity. But your story is engraved forever in the shelves of heaven. Nature itself reflects this principle. The more a river meets obstacles, the more it carves valleys that become monuments of endurance. Isn't that your life? Chosen one, they tried to dam your current with stones of slander. Yet the river only found a deeper course, roaring stronger than ever. Their paper walls were nothing against the flood of your reality. Like the cedar tree that grows straighter the more the wind beats against it. You only rooted deeper with every storm. And now, the very obstacles they placed have become the landscape of your testimony. But why didn't their story stick? Because words soaked in envy always betray themselves. The bitterness bleeds through the page, and the audience can smell the stench of lies disguised as truth. Didn't the Pharisees attempt the same with Jesus, writing false charges and staging a mock trial, only to see the cross become his coronation? Luke 23:47. Your enemies exposed themselves, not you. Their fiction became a footnote. Your life became the headline. Every rumor they wrote became an unwilling advertisement for your resilience. Each lie was recycled as proof of their own desperation, while your destiny marched forward untouchable. History also records villains who tried to control narratives but were consumed by their own ink. King Ahab rewrote history with lies, trying to seize Naboth's vineyard. But the blood of his schemes cried out for judgment. 1 Kings 21:19. And Diotrephes, mentioned in 3 John 1-9-10, tried to spread malicious gossip to control God's people. Yet he was remembered only for his arrogance. Isn't this the same destiny your enemies now face, their names attached forever to schemes that backfired? Their plans will be remembered only as cautionary tales, while your name echoes in stories of endurance. And this is the sting they built their legacy out of sand, while yours is carved in stone. Ordinary wisdom testifies. Elena, a teacher in a small Italian town, once said after being falsely accused by rivals, "They wrote lies about me." But truth was the ink that never faded. Her life later proved her words true, as her integrity turned the lies into comedy. Isn't that also your reality, that every false script became the prologue to your next success? While they whispered, you worked. While they slandered, you soared. While they edited your failures, Heaven published your victories. Their pens ran dry, but your chapters keep multiplying. Here is the dagger lodged in their pride, while they staged tragedies. The audience was transfixed by your triumph. They prepared a funeral, but you held a resurrection. They rehearsed your silence, but you sung louder. They wanted to erase you, but Psalm 45, uno declares, "My heart is stirred by a noble theme as I recite my verses for the king. My tongue is the pen of a skillful writer." You were never their character, you were always the author. And every chapter you write now is a weapon that slashes their false narratives to ribbons. Chosen one, rise now. Hold the pen heaven placed in your hand and keep writing. Their lies were nothing more than drafts destined for fire, while your life is the living manuscript of victory. Stand tall and declare it. The ending they wanted will never come, because the story was never theirs to write. It is yours, and you are still in the middle of your masterpiece. And when the final chapter is written, it will not be tragedy, but triumph crowned with eternal glory. Number 9. Their shadows collapsed under the eyes that see everything. Secrecy is only power until it stands before someone who can see in the dark. That is the blow tearing through your enemies right now. They gathered in back rooms, whispered in alleys, wrote hidden notes, and believed that the cloak of silence would keep you stumbling. But Job 2:20 declares, he reveals the deep things of darkness and brings utter darkness into the light. Isn't that their greatest humiliation, that what they trusted as cover became a spotlight exposing their schemes? Their illusion of darkness was only a thin curtain, and when it was ripped apart, their weakness stood naked before heaven and earth. The very shadows they thought were armor turned into glass windows, transparent to every watching eye. They thought shadows would blind you, but your discernment burned brighter than their secrecy ever could. You didn't just observe their moves, you decoded their motives before they acted. Isn't that why Elisha heard the secret war plans of the Arameans and warned Israel again and again? 2 Kings 6:12. They believed silence was their fortress. Yet every whisper became a confession in your ears. They planned in the dark, but you carried the vision of one who walks with light. Their supposed weapon became their undoing. They forgot that vision is not bound by walls, and spiritual clarity can pierce even the thickest veil. Their arrogance blinded them, because, in their pride, they never realized discernment is like an X-ray. It penetrates the surface and sees what lies beneath. And what is more humiliating than being exposed without ever being touched? Imagine it. Chosen one. A thief cuts the lights, certain that darkness will protect him. Hetiptus, smirking, thinking himself clever, until suddenly he realizes the one he stalks can see perfectly in the night. Isn't this the humiliation your enemies face, thinking their silence was safety, only to discover that you were watching all along? Psalm 139:12 says, "Even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day. For darkness is as light to you." And that is why their secrecy suffocates them now, because the very night they trusted turned against them. They built their confidence on blindness, but you walked with night vision given by heaven. Each step they made, believing unseen, became another act recorded in the court of eternity. Their terror grows, not because you attacked, but because you never once lost sight. Here is the truth that destroys their pride. Discernment doesn't require evidence, it reads frequency. Like a tuning fork, resonating with hidden vibrations. You caught the rhythm of their whispers, the cycle of their tricks, the tremors of their intentions. Isn't that why Jesus said in Luke 12:2, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known"? They thought you were blind, but you were calculating. They thought you were stumbling, but you were charting their map. They miscalculated because they judged by silence, but you moved by resonance. Just as physics proves that every hidden wave eventually surfaces in sound, so too did their secrets vibrate into exposure. The more they tried to suppress, the louder the frequency of their guilt rang in your ears. And why do they gnash their teeth now, pacing in paranoia? Because their secrecy didn't shield them, it betrayed them. Every closed-door meeting became evidence of their fear. Every coded message only confirmed their insecurity. Didn't Haman, in Esther's day, hold secret councils to destroy the Jews, only to watch his own plot become the gallows on which he hanged? Esther 7:10. Their alliances, their whispers, their safe places, none of it could contain the truth. Isn't that why they're restless, tormented, choking on the question, "How did you know?" The answer is brutal. You listened where their noise could not reach, and you saw where their shadows could not hide. They underestimated the psychology of fear, for secrecy never silences guilt. It amplifies it until they are undone by their own trembling hands. Ordinary people testify to this reality. Marco, a fisherman from Sicily, once said, after exposing a smuggling ring in his village, "The sea always returns what men try to hide beneath it." Isn't that the echo of your story too, that no matter how deep they tried to bury their secrets, discernment dragged them back to the surface? Their weapons of silence only revealed their weakness. Their conspiracies were nothing but children hiding under blankets, trembling when the light returned. Every plan they buried was like contraband, washed ashore, exposed in broad daylight for all to see. Even the simplest soul knows that tides and truth share the same law. Both always come back, stronger than before. Picture it clearly. They laid a chessboard in the dark. Sure, you would stumble across pieces you could not see, but you didn't just play, you turned on the light. By the time they moved their pawns, you had already seen the checkmate. Ephésiens 5:13 proclame. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. Isn't this the cruelest irony? Their shadows gave them no cover, their whispers no edge, and their silence no advantage. Their greatest asset became the very noose tightening around their schemes. They built cathedrals of secrecy without realizing their architecture was flawed. Their foundations cracked before the first stone was laid. Now their once hidden plots lie in ruins, monuments to their own folly. Chosen one, rise. You walked through their darkness untouched, while they remained trapped in the very shadows they trusted to protect them. Their secrecy collapsed. Their whispers turned to screams. Their strategies burned away in the light of truth. Stand tall and declare, you were never blind, never bound, never fool. The eyes of discernment see all, and today the world knows you cannot be hidden, and you cannot be stopped. Stand, because the light in you has swallowed the night, and every shadow bows before your sight. Number 10. They mistook your pause for their triumph. Only fools throw a victory party in the middle of the race. That is the bitter truth your enemies are choking on right now. They saw your pauses, your quiet seasons, the moments when progress wasn't loud or visible, and they clapped like they had already won. In their arrogance, they mistook incubation for collapse. They confused silence with defeat. They mistook strategy for stagnation. But Isaiah 40:31 declares, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles." Isn't that the irony tearing through them? What they thought was, your death was the rehearsal for your flight, and now their premature applause has turned into an echo chamber of shame, because what they celebrated was only a shadow, not the final score. They laughed while you stood still, mocking the emptiness of your silence. But they never understood that waiting was not weakness. It was the sacred interval where strength multiplies. Isn't this the same lesson from Joseph's years in prison? Forgotten by men but remembered by God, rising from the dungeon to the throne in one moment. Genesis 41:41. They toasted to your downfall, not realizing patience was becoming your weapon. Their short-sighted vision mistook the scaffolding of construction for ruins. Yet every pause in your life was like an architect drawing unseen blueprints. What seemed idle was sacred design. And now their pride collapses, because the building they thought abandoned has risen into a cathedral of victory. They cannot explain how the stones were set, how the walls stood, or how the dome crowned itself in majesty, because they never stayed long enough to witness the architect at work. But why did they celebrate too soon? Because they measured the wrong things. They looked for speed while you were building longevity. They looked for noise while you were building substance. They looked for quick collapse while you were forging endurance. Isn't this why David wrote in Psalm 27:14, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord"? Their timeline was shallow. Yours was eternal. They mistook your stillness for surrender. But stillness was strategy. They mistook your pause for paralysis. But your pause was the bowstring stretching. And when the bow released, your rise became the arrow piercing their pride. And the truth is this: their calendar ran out of ink, but yours was written on eternity's clock. Untouchable, unhurried, undeniable. History proves the same pattern. Didn't Noah look foolish, building the ark in silence for years, mocked by his generation, until the flood revealed who was truly prepared? Genesis 7:7. Isn't this the same cycle repeating, that your silence was never surrender but divine suspense? They danced too soon, because they never understood the sound of patience. It is the drumbeat of destiny preparing to erupt. Habakkuk 2:3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it tarry. Wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not delay. Their timeline was a spark. Yours was eternal fire. And sparks always die out in seconds. But eternal fire burns until history itself bows down before it. Their laughter was brief, but your unveiling is permanent. The voices of art echo this truth. Michelangelo, after years of grueling labor on the Sistine Chapel, once said, "If people knew how hard I had to work to gain my mastery, it would not seem so wonderful at all." Isn't that your testimony as well, that the world only sees the eruption, never the silent chiseling that made it possible? While they mocked your quiet seasons, you were carving destiny stroke by stroke, preparing a masterpiece they cannot erase. Their mockery turned hollow, while your silence became a symphony. And in this, art and life intertwine. The ceiling Michelangelo painted was not born in applause, but in agony, patience, and persistence. And now it thundered across centuries as eternal proof. So too, your story will not fade with the critics' laughter. It will echo like a fresco in the halls of eternity. And now their greatest cheers have turned into their deepest groans. They built bonfires to celebrate your stagnation, but your fire consumed theirs, leaving them in ashes. They thought you were stuck, but your stillness birthed strategy. They thought you were finished, but you were only loading. Isn't that the cruelest blow to them, that your delay was not defeat, but the countdown to eruption? Psalm 40:1, the 2nd of December, Lares. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Delay was never your grave, it was your stage. And when the curtains rose, the entire theater of heaven and earth had no choice but to stand in ovation. Chosen one, rise. Their false sense of victory has become the haunting memory of their failure. Their arrogance was shattered by your breakthrough. Stand tall and declare it now. Delay was never defeated. It was alignment. It was strategy. It was divine suspense. And when your moment came, it proved once and for all, patience is power. Silence is strength. And destiny always outlasts mockery. Stand, because your pause has ended, and your eruption has begun. And this time, no one will mistake your silence for weakness again. Number 11. They poured their fire into your ruin, while you fed yours into becoming unstoppable. An enemy's greatest humiliation is realizing that every ounce of energy they spent destroying you only watered the roots of your success. Isn't that the dagger twisting inside their pride? They sacrificed nights whispering, plotting, and feeding off each other's bitterness. But Psalm 37:12-13 says, "The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming." And now their laughter has curdled into groans, because while they obsessed over your collapse, you obsessed over your growth. They directed every curse, every rumor, every obstacle toward your downfall. But your discipline turned each blow into a stepping stone. Isn't that why Joseph declared to his brothers in Genesis 50:20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." They thought disruption was power. But true power has always belonged to the builder, not the breaker. And here's the savage irony. Every rumor they spread became fertilizer. Every wound they inflicted became scar tissue. And every setback they celebrated became your rehearsal for triumph. Now they live with the nightmare that their war against you became the very training that crowned you. Nature itself testifies to this mystery. A volcano erupts, intending to burn everything in its path. But centuries later, its ash creates the richest soil on earth. Isn't that your story too? That the destruction they hurled only created the ground for your abundance. Isaiah 61:3 declares that God gives beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the garment of praise for the spirit of despair. Their fire never consumed you, it fertilized you. And when the harvest came, they could not deny that the field they tried to poison now glows with fruitfulness. But here's the question that haunts them in the night. Why didn't their obsession break you? Why did it only make you stronger? Isn't it brutal to admit that while they fed on paranoia, you fed on purpose? They wasted their breath plotting your downfall while you were breathing life into your future. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him." Their energy evaporated into nothingness, but yours compounded into unstoppable momentum. The more they threw, the more you multiplied, until their strongest efforts collapsed under the weight of your resilience. History gives us warnings in flesh and blood. Nero, the Emperor of Rome, poured fire into persecution of Christians, convinced he could erase their faith with cruelty. Yet what happened? The very flames he lit became the testimony that spread the gospel across empires. Isn't that the same punishment your enemies now endure, that their attack became your platform? Their cruelty, your confirmation, their story ends in ashes, while yours is written in eternity's ink. Picture it clearly. They gathered in secret, burning energy like wildfire, convinced their alliance of bitterness was indestructible. But as they burned themselves hollow, you sat in silence, stacking brick on brick, building a fortress of resilience. Isn't this why Nehemiah 6-9 said, "They were all trying to frighten us," thinking, "Their hands will get too weak for the work, and it will not be completed." But I prayed, "Now, strengthen my hands." And your hands were strengthened until the very wall they tried to tear down became the monument that mocks their defeat. Their obsession drained them. While your discipline propelled you into clarity and calmness they will never reach. Chosen one, rise. Let this truth thunder in your bones. Their fire did not destroy you, it refined you. Their curses did not bury you, they crowned you. Their wasted energy became your testimony. Stand tall now, because the more they tried to break you, the more unstoppable you became. Rise, for their downfall is written in their exhaustion, but your destiny is carved in eternal strength. The very hours they spent watching you are the hours you spent outgrowing them. The very weapons they built against you became the tools that refined you. Their fixation created the evidence of your strength. Their obsession proved your importance. And now the cruelest twist of all is staring them in the face. They became the architects of your elevation. They lit the fire meant to burn you, but you used the flames to forge steel. And every moment they wasted on your downfall will forever be the reminder of how far ahead you'll always be. Chosen one, what your enemies meant for your downfall has only proven your unstoppable rise. Every scheme, every whisper, every false weapon they built has collapsed under the weight of your resilience. And the greatest evidence of their defeat is simple. You are still here, stronger, sharper, untouchable. So, if this message spoke to you, press the like button if you haven't already. And if you're not yet part of our family, make sure to hit subscribe. Together, we rise, we shine, and we keep exposing the weakness of those who tried to bury us. Your victory is undeniable.